Welcome back to the show, everyone. We are live-ish from CodeMash conference in Sandusky, Ohio. And I'm here for a couple of days, and I'm going to pull a couple of different folks in here to have a conversation about multi-threaded income. And today I am joined by Kilian Valkholf. Valkholf.
Yes, very
Okay.
good.
Sorry. I am awful with names. Anyone who's listened to the podcast knows I am awful with names. I do my best. But Killian, it is very good to have you on the podcast. This is
Nice to
your
be here.
first CodeMash.
It is, yes.
Excellent. What are you guys be speaking on?
I'm going to do two talks, one on Thursday and one on Friday. The one on Thursday is called Stop Using JavaScript for That.
Okay.
And it's all about things you can nowadays do in CSS and HTML that a few years ago you needed JavaScript for.
Yeah.
But because the web is the web, all that JavaScript stuff still works, and you might not realize there's a better way. So it's just, me telling you all the better ways that you can write the same stuff in a much easier way.
Absolutely.
And then the second one is called Understanding CSS Layout. And it's all about learning and understanding like the fundamentals and the basic concepts behind CSS as it is.
Yeah.
Because if you understand those, suddenly all the weird stuff in CSS suddenly starts to make sense.
Mm-hmm.
It's the first time I'm giving that talk, so it's going to be very interesting to see how it goes. But
Yeah.
I'm very excited for both.
Good luck. And as a longtime CodeMash speaker, you're going to do great. You're going to have a packed house. Like everyone's here for you to win. So you're going to do a great job. But that's not why we want to talk. Like we want to talk about CodeMash all day. But you have an app that or product that you deploy
That's right.
you publish, called Polypane.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about what Polypane is and the problem it's solving?
So Polypane is a web browser, just like Google Chrome, just like Firefox, except that it's a web browser specifically developed for people building websites. So it's a web browser for web developers. And what that means is that it's essentially like someone a few months back called it's like DevTools with cheat codes enabled.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my tagline now. It's essentially this idea of what if your entire browser was a dev tool that's completely designed to help you build websites faster, better, catch errors before your users do, make sure that it works on all devices, make sure that it's accessible and that it's easy for you to do all those things rather than having it feel like an additional thing you have to do.
Gotcha. What was your reason for building the app? Was there something you were doing in your job previously that you thought, oh, this would be a really good product to have? What was your lead up to eventually starting down the path of Polypane?
Yeah, so before this, I ran an internet agency. So I just sold, websites and apps to everyone that wants it.
Mm-hmm.
And around 2014, 2015, I had switched over the design team from Photoshop, which we were using, to Sketch. And one thing I really enjoyed working with Sketch was that it had this concept of artboards. Like nowadays, that's not special. Like everyone has artboards, but back then, like Sketch really introduced the concept of you have a large canvas and then you have different artboards on that canvas. Whereas Photoshop, it was just like one design is one file.
Yeah.
And what that enabled me to do in Sketch was to have all the responsive variants of a website, so the mobile design and the tablet design and the desktop design, side by side in one overview. And that really sped up my design time because I could very quickly compare, contrast, change across all the sizes and visually see that I did it correctly,
Mm-hmm.
that worked, that I didn't miss anything, that what tended to happen in that time during that time was designers would design the desktop view and then the mobile view, and then they needed to update the desktop view for something, and then an entire section would just be missing on mobile.
Yeah.
And that really slowed down the process.
Yeah.
And suddenly with Sketch, you had this right in your face. Like if there was a content block missing, you would instantly see it. So that was a really great way of working. But then when it came to implementing those designs, I went back to the browser, and suddenly I was back in like the Photoshop world. Like I could only see one page in a single size at once,
Yeah.
and I had to switch back and forth all the time. And I had always been building like tools to make my own life better as a web developer. So I came up with like essentially like a dinky Electron app that showed a web page at 3 different sizes,
Mm-hmm.
and like an unstyled input bar at the top where I could put in the internet address. And I started using that to build my websites because it would show me like mobile, tablets, and desktop side by side.
Yeah.
So I used that and it was nice, but I didn't really think much of it. Like it was just like a throwaway tool until I started comparing my hours. And when using that tool, I was 60% faster compared to not using that tool.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And that's when I realized, like, maybe this is a product. Maybe this isn't just a dinky tool for me.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is a product. So I started developing it more and more and more and shared a beta out. And then in 2019, I quit my agency, or I sold my shares in the agency and went full-time on what was then known as Polypane.
Gotcha. So you had existing customers before you quit your agency?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm always interested in the ramp up. So you're working on Polypane, and eventually you hit a point where you just felt like Polypane was the way to go. You didn't need to do all this other work. I know we don't like talking about numbers sometimes, but so you are from the Netherlands.
Yes.
And so a lot of listeners are US based. I'm always kind of interested in just income, lifestyle, cost of living fluctuations. Would you be comfortable kind of talking about the number where income wise, where it felt comfortable quitting your comfortable
Yeah.
agency and going full time?
Yeah, so it wasn't really a number thing because at that point I had been giving Polypane away for free,
Yeah.
like as a beta. But I have been running that agency for 14 years. I started very early.
Yeah.
And I was also kind of done with the agency game. You don't have to get into that, but I think
I understand. Yeah.
agencies as a concept are like the middle is falling out.
Yeah.
Like you either are a very large agency servicing very large customers, or you sell very cheaply to very small customers, and the middle just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And I saw that writing on the wall, so I wanted to get out. I had always wanted to do a product company, and we could never get it to work. So I figured, now's the time to just go for it.
Yeah.
So this is probably very poor financial advice.
Yeah.
But I sold my shares, so I had money in the bank, and I gave myself a year to just develop Polypane, see where I could bring it, where I could take it in that year, and then after a year, I was gonna decide, like, am I going to continue doing this, or am I just going to go back to like advising, freelancing, all the stuff that I also have been doing during that time.
Oh, you essentially self-funded your own developments.
Yeah.
You had enough in the bank. I see a lot of people do that. They're just successful doing something, and they're putting together their we call it the nest egg. You just have
Exactly.
money off to the side.
Yeah.
And if you're going to invest in something, always invest in yourself. And I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, and it was a calculated risk.
Yeah.
And it could not have worked out, but luckily it did work out. And after a year, I was confident enough in the cash flow, in the trajectory of the company, that I decided to just keep going.
Let's talk about some of the details of just running a product company. So you took what was a free product, you rebuilt it, turned it into a pay product?
Well, so during the beta, it was free, as in, it's in beta and you can use it.
Yeah.
but with the full intention of at some point, this is going to become a paid product. So like I quit on December 31st, 2018.
Mm-hmm.
And then I gave myself a month off and I didn't make it. So after 2 weeks, I was, figuring out what are all the things I need to do to make this a product I can sell.
Mm-hmm.
And that, of course, there's part of the product itself that I felt needed more, or it needed to be better, or it needed to be streamlined in different ways. So that's some product work to do. Once you start selling licenses or subscriptions, you're gonna need something to manage that stuff. So I wrote my own like license checking server and subscription management dashboard.
Yeah.
For that, hooking up like payment processors and databases, and making sure all of that worked, and then coming up with the marketing plan and like how am I going to announce this to the world and make sure that people can try it, and how am I going to run trials, because I want people to try it before they have to commit.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to set that up, and then I ended up launching in May, the 14th of May 2019, with a bit of a run up. So I had about 3,000 people on the beta list. So in the days before launching, I emailed them like, I'm going to launch this and this date. There's going to be a product hunt page, because that was the thing to do.
That's the thing you do.
Like, please vote for me. But then, you can't say, please vote for me, but you have to be like, if you enjoy Polypane, then please consider, etc. And then, figuring out what are all the other places I can, share the news with. I made some way over the top press release, like Dutch company is taking on Google, and it got picked up by like a few Dutch websites. So that was fun. And then also what I did, I'm using Paddle as a payment processor. Because they are a merchant of record, and that means they handle all the tax stuff. So then I don't have to calculate VAT for all the companies in the world and remit that and do a VAT MOS like every quarter and fill in numbers for each European. That's not what I want to be doing in my company. So I just, let someone else deal with that.
Let's stop on that just for folks who are listening. As small businesses, when you're selling, whether it's subscription products or you're selling licenses of any kind, especially over in Europe, you have to basically pay taxes in all the places that your customers are buying from.
Yes.
And a little bit of that is leaking over into the United States now, where now companies who are selling products have to pay taxes in individual states. And I'm sure there's even a complexity where if you want to be a large legitimate company in Europe, you have to pay taxes in the United States. And the fundamental problem in the United States is they kind of pass the laws like, oh, you have to pay the state tax and the locality tax, like in the cities that you're in. But none of the infrastructures are set up for that. There are some cases, and I have a really good friend who lives in Denmark, she's a U.S. citizen who lives in Denmark now, and she went very deep into, there's counties where you can't pay your taxes unless you're in person. Like there's no online method to do it, and it's just so hard to be correct, to be up to date. Like if you want to be a good tax-paying citizen, it's just very difficult to do that. But the merchant of record, like going through Paddle, you don't have to worry about any of that, which
it makes my life much easier.
I'm sure.
And I mean, like they do charge a fee for that. But the amount of comfort it gives me that I don't have to be responsible for typing in the right number 50 times each month, because I know I am not the type of person that can type in a number 50 times correctly each month. That's just not gonna happen. I'm gonna get distracted like at the 10th digit I have to fill in, and then my accountant is gonna be mad at me, and the IRS is gonna be mad at me, and I just don't want to deal.
The less we have to do, the better.
Yeah.
Let someone else worry about it. All right, I think that's fascinating. So how was that initial ramp? You did the launch, you did a product hunt?
Yeah, so what I actually did was like 10 days or so before launching, I sent out an email to all the beta subscribers, like, I want to test my checkout flow, and like, I've done it, but it works for me. That doesn't really mean anything.
Yeah.
Like, I know which button to push to do the right thing. Like, who wants to buy Polypane now? For a discount, of course.
Yep.
So I got my first customers before launching, which was like a great like pre-validation, as it were. But that also proved like, okay, everything works correctly, so I can launch. There's no scary parts there. Like, there's no systems that are gonna blow up. There's no like emails that are not gonna get sent. Like, everything works.
Yeah.
And I can just, put the website online and hope. So that was really nice. I'm very happy that I did it that way. And then I launched, and all my friends voted for it. I don't think it ended up at number 1, but
it's hard to get the number 1.
Even back then, like, there was a fair amount of like buying votes going on, even more so now. But that doesn't matter. Like, that's just a moment, and from there you continue building. And so that's what I still try to do, where I'm like 50% product and then 50% all the rest.
Yeah.
And all the rest being a majority marketing, but then also like support, accounting, administrative tasks, etc. It doesn't always work, because I am a developer, so if I can work on the product, I'm gonna always prefer doing that, which is a trap. I've seen other people deal with that by having like very strict, like, this is product week or this is marketing week.
Yep.
That doesn't work for me, because if there's a product thing that that is running as like a background task in my head. So if that has to run as a background task for an entire week, that's going to be an issue.
Yeah.
So I usually do, I switch it up like halfway through the day.
Is it just you still on the doing everything?
Yeah.
Have you any ambition to bring on
well,
any
so
team members?
the agency had 14 people. So I was quite happy not to have employees for a bit, and I still am, because like working with people is great, but being responsible for the livelihoods of other people's families is not so great. So yeah, I'm gonna stretch it out for as long as I can. I do work with freelancers every now and then for tasks that I don't enjoy. So I had a freelancer migrate my database at some point. I had a freelancer do some like SEO research.
What do you think the first position you would hire would be if you went in that direction?
That's tough, because like product makes the most sense, but it's also the thing that I get the most enjoyment out of. So essentially every hire you make every hire you make as a one-person company is going to be for something that has the most impact. But in a one-person company, you have the most impact. Like, other things I could hire people for are like all the admin work. But like in my system,
Yeah.
I do that Monday morning and it takes me an hour.
Yeah.
And I do it every week. I'm very diligent about that. And then it's just always up to date and it's no work at all. And you don't have to stress at like 11 p.m. on tax day, like getting all the receipts
Yeah.
in order to make sure that you can submit your stuff to the IRS. Like that never happens for me. If I have to pay VAT, it's like, oh, it's a VAT month.
Yeah.
Click, send, and it's done. So that's also not something I need to
Yeah.
hire someone for, because of systems.
Always find a lot of developer-centric products always tend to hire out the marketing or the support aspects of it first, because like I don't know how much support do you have to do on Polypane? Are you getting a good number of support requests?
So I invest a lot in the documentation.
Good plan. Yeah.
And that really helps. I get like maybe a dozen or so inquiries a day.
Okay.
So that's perfectly manageable.
Not enough where you're stressing out about taking care of the customers.
No.
And
So I have live chats everywhere, like on the site, in the app, etc. People are always very surprised when I respond like within 2 minutes. But that live chat, it just lands on my phone. So almost regardless of what I'm doing, I can reply, and because I built the entire product, I always have the answer ready.
Yep.
Um,
Absolutely. That's a difficult thing to train. Say, all right, here's how this product that has lived in my head for years and years.
Exactly.
Here's everything you need to know about it. I can understand that.
Yeah, and then for marketing, what the interesting thing with marketing is that I do talk to marketing people a lot, and I enjoy challenging them, because marketing for developers is so very different from like the marketing playbook. But what's interesting, because I've been saying that for 4 years, because like in that first year I tried essentially everything you can try in terms of marketing, like cold outreach, email campaigns, ads, almost everything you can imagine. So and I kept notes on that, so I knew what worked, what didn't work, if I could figure out why it didn't work. So whenever I would talk to like a marketing expert and they're like, have you considered doing blah? And we're like, yep, that doesn't work for this and this and this reason. And almost always I'd end up exhausting their suggestions. So yeah, and then what, like the only thing that really works for developers is word of mouth.
Yeah.
And that's not really something you can like guide. You can only stimulate it, and you can only stimulate it by having a good product and by making it easy for people to try it out and making it easy for people to share that. And coincidentally, that's also the work you need to do to make the product good.
Yeah.
So that overlaps really well. But that also means that, where other companies might be like, yeah, we're just going to do a marketing or an email campaign to 20,000 companies in the next month, and that's going to give us 10% return.
Yep.
Like, yeah, that's just not going to happen for me. It's going to be much slower, and that's okay.
Yeah. I definitely feel with trying to market to developers. So much of developer products is right place, right time. So just constantly, consistently putting your message out there, your product out there, in the hope that the developer who you're trying to attract is looking at it at the right time.
Yeah.
And like speaking at conferences is probably a good marketing device for you, because hopefully you show your product and someone goes, ooh, what's that? And follows up, maybe eventually ends up a sale and a customer for life.
Yeah. Yeah, so that is part of why I do conference speaking.
Yeah.
It's also because I enjoy it a
Yeah.
lot, so that helps. But yeah, it's definitely like a good way to share your products, like with people, like plainly speaking, with people that aren't on Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
which are way more people than you think.
Yeah.
Like it's very easy to get myopic about it when you're on Twitter, you're in those dev communities,
Yeah.
and it's very easy to think like, yeah, this is it. Obviously, everyone's here.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's not the case. And it's at conferences like this where you meet so much more diverse people.
Yeah. So kind of moving on, I know you have a family.
Yeah.
How have you felt your life-work balance has gotten better going all in on the product versus when you were with the agency?
That it hasn't really changed.
Okay.
So I for myself, I had always been very strict. Like I work 40 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
I can work a little more if needed, but that's not going to be quality hours. That's just going to be grind.
Yeah.
So, it's better if I don't. And that's true for Polypane as well. So if I worked for 8 hours a day, I'm done. Like every hour I work in the evening, I have to work 2 hours to make up the next day.
Yeah.
So it's better if I don't. Uh, and I work from home. I have 2 young children. If anything, I work less now because I don't have to be in office managing people. If one of my kids is ill, then then I don't work that day.
Yeah.
And that's a really easy decision. It's not always something I enjoy,
Mm-hmm.
because it is still lost time that I could have developed things faster. But family comes first.
Absolutely.
That's a very easy choice to make. So yeah, so I get that it really depends on your personality.
Yeah.
Like there are many people that enjoy very much to work until very late, and they get a lot of energy from that.
I don't.
But yeah, but I'm not
Yeah.
that person. So it's better if I don't, for me, for the product, for the speed with which I can release stuff. So I don't.
What's next? Is Polypane just gonna be your life for the next several years, or do you have anything else that you're starting to work on?
So Polypane is definitely going to be my life for the next couple of years. When I launched, I had a roadmap of 5 years worth of features.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're 5 years later, and I have a roadmap of 5 years worth of features.
There you go.
So it's a never-ending story. But I've also been working on a second product called Polypane Cloud. So one of the things Polypane does is it makes it really easy to figure out like what are the accessibility issues of the particular page that I'm looking at,
Mm-hmm.
and more importantly, how do I fix them? How do I improve it? Because like there's a lot of tools that will tell you everything you did wrong with your website. But if you're a developer, and I know this from agency experience, if you're a developer and you encounter like a tool telling you did it wrong, then you have a choice to make. And the choice is, am I going to figure out what the right way is, and figure out which of the 5 like different answers I can find is the actual correct one?
Yeah.
Or am I gonna move this ticket to done and make my PM happy? And then that second choice is always going to be the choice they make, because websites get built by the deadline, and making that deadline is always going to be more important. So one thing that I feel very strongly about in Polypane is that I want that choice to not exist. I want the developer to be working on a website and Polypane saying, hey, this is wrong, do this instead.
Mm-hmm.
And because they're then working on it, it takes no effort. It takes no additional effort to fix the thing and carry on with your task, rather than having to go out of that development flow and into research mode. But Polypane is a browser, and one characteristic of a browser is that it shows a web page and not a website. So a lot of people have been asking me for the past few years, like, all this tooling is great, but I just want to scan my entire website and have you tell me what I should fix. So that's what I've been building, like essentially all the tooling that I have in Polypane. It's all JavaScript, Polypane.
Mhm.
So all the tests and checks, etc. that I have, they're all little scripts. I've been building this website scanner that goes through your website, opens every web page, does all the checks that I already have, and then creates a report for that based on an accessibility standard so that it's interoperable, and you can like generate an HTML report and a PDF report like in one go. So that's what I've been working on, and I also work with a freelancer for that because backend development isn't my thing.
Yeah.
Like I can do it, but I don't enjoy it. And I know other people do enjoy it and they do a much better job than me because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been working with a freelancer where, they do all the stuff I find boring.
Yeah.
And then I come in and do the UI stuff and the logic, or the business logic, the interaction, etc. And that's been going really well. That's in beta now. A few companies using it. I'm just iterating on that, and it's a very nice product to sit alongside Polypane.
Yeah.
Because it shares a lot of like those checks. It takes me half an hour to move a check from Polypane to Polypane Cloud.
Okay.
And that includes like a database migration and a visualization, because there's a bunch of stuff shared between them. So it's essentially just copy and pasting and then making sure that I store the right thing in the right place. So that's been, I'm very happy with the technology choices that I made there that have enabled that. But hopefully that also means that I can iterate really fast. And I hope to be able to sell that to larger companies and larger accessibility testing agencies. Whereas Polypane is much more an individual product, like a single developer buys it or a single team buys it for their team. And Polypane Cloud is more something that the entire company can use. So I hope that makes it easier to grow.
That's awesome. So kind of wrapping up, any advice for anyone who's out there that says, I have a product idea, I want to start working on it. What advice would you give to that person?
I mean, so if you look at what I did, that's probably not advisable. Like quit everything and work on it for a year. You don't have to do that. But what I did there was I had a lot of validation beforehand. Like when I quit my job, I already had 3,000 people that were interested in what I was building. Try to, build stuff that you need, because that is going to make sure that you have the internal motivation to keep working on it forever. And then, validate that other people also have a similar need. And you can do that very simply by, what I did with Polypane initially was, everyone can get the beta, but they have to give me their email address.
Yeah.
And it's low effort, but it also gives you the ability to send them updates, because, I didn't have an auto updating mechanism for the beta, because that's a pain to set up as well. And, you can learn so much from that process, and by just being like very candid with the people that are trying your tools. So yeah, that's to me the way to get started, and that's how I would do it again as well. Like get people in and then work with them on like, what do you need? Does this work for you? And that can be very low effort. Like an email doesn't take a lot of time.
No.
Reading their reply also doesn't take a lot of time. And yeah, go from there. Like at some point, for me at least, I could feel like, okay, this is now viable.
Yeah.
In some way. Like I can see this going somewhere. Like what I have now definitely isn't good yet,
Mm-hmm.
but it has potential.
Yeah.
And there's that moment where, like, probably when people start to proactively tell you stuff, like where it's no longer a pull,
Mm-hmm.
like you're not pulling for replies, you're not like, please give me feedback, but they're sending you feedback whether you want to or not.
Yeah.
Like I think that's the point where like people are motivated enough that they see this tool and they want to use it and they want it to be better because they want to use it.
Yeah.
And then that's the point where you can be like, okay, now I'm going to spend more time on that. And, you know, be more structured about that.
That's great advice. I think so too. Well, Killian, I'm not going to take up any more of your time. Thank you so much for hanging out with me.
Yeah, thank you as well.
Thank you for being on the podcast, and everyone out there, thank you for watching. We're going to put links to all your stuff in Polypane. So if you're out there and you're like, that's exactly what I need, check the links in the show notes, and we'll get you a couple more customers. We'll do our best. So, all right, everyone, we'll see you next week on the Multithreaded Income Podcast. Take care. You've been listening to the Multithreaded Income Podcast. I really hope that this podcast has been useful for you. If it has, please take a moment to leave a review wherever you get your podcast from. And don't forget, the conversation doesn't stop here. Join us on our Discord at mti.to/Discord. I've been your host, Kevin Griffin, and we'll see you next week. Cha-ching!